We talked about how psychology is referred to as a science, and the reason for the distinction of being a science is because of the scientific methods of research that psychologists follow. So, Unit 2, or not Unit 2, but Module 2 talks about methods of research, and we're going to take a look at a few things here. First of all, let's kind of review the scientific method. With the scientific method, you have the same structure that again is used in any other scientific discipline, whether it be biology, chemistry, physics, any other science. Sociology is considered a science. It's another social science. They follow the same scientific method, same procedures. First thing you're going to do when you do research is you try to define what it is you're really examining. What is it you're going to look at? So, you pick whatever the topic is. You then go out and review the literature, see, what is it that's already been published on this topic, what kind of research has already been done, what can you learn about it to begin with, and then eventually you formulate the hypothesis. Now, the hypothesis, many of you have heard about that before. We'll talk about it again in another session here, but a lot of people refer to the hypothesis as kind of an educated guess. We're going to go in more detail on that again later, but that's your hypothesis. Basically, you're trying to come up with what you believe to be true about the relationship between a couple things. Then, after you get your hypothesis and all set up, then you're going to select some type of a research design. Maybe you decide to use observation, or maybe you're going to use a case study or a survey to collect your data. And then once you decide what's the most appropriate, what's going to get you the best info and the best data, then you go out and collect your data and finally analyze the data. Now, you have to base your conclusion on the data, okay, when you develop your conclusion, and then essentially you're going to publish your results and let other people know about what you've done. Have you further brought about the research in that particular area. So that's basically what we're looking at in the scientific method of research. The next week or so, when we're talking about it in class and doing things, we're going to essentially look at these two steps primarily. Okay, formulating the hypothesis and then selecting the research design and collecting data. So that's what we're going to focus on when we talk about it in class. Now, in terms of the research, there's a couple different basic types of research. You can talk about applied research or applied psychology. And applied psych or applied research has a clear practical application to it. You can use the data, you can use the information you're going to gather. For example, research on therapies that are used for drug addicts. Okay, that's got a very clear purpose to it. If you go to a bookstore, new bookstore, you go into what they call the applied psychology section, you will see what I kind of refer to as the how-to section. How to be a better son or daughter, how to improve your memory, how to get better grades. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and how to improve relationships. You can read those books, and basically it's giving you information on based on research, how to improve yourself in certain areas. That's applied research. Basic research looks at things that you might be curious about, but it's not going to revolutionize your way of behaving. So, for example, studying how kissing techniques or styles change as people tend to get older. Might be interesting, but it's not going to probably light your world on fire. I don't think it's going to change anybody's methods or style of kissing, although these two seem to be going at it pretty good here. But that's the difference between just, applied research and basic research. Now, one other thing we want to look at here in terms of the research is collecting our data. When we talk about collecting the data, one of the things we have to talk about is selecting who are we going to get data from. Where are subjects coming from? And the thing is, obviously, you have to select your subjects randomly. We always want to try and randomize things in the data collection. If you are doing a survey of people in the high school, you go to your lunch and all of a sudden you start handing out surveys to all of your lunch buddies and all the people that sit around your table. That's not random. You're not getting a randomized group of people, and therefore if the subjects are not randomly chosen, then your results, the data you get from that, is going to be swayed. It's going to be tainted. So you always want to try and make sure that the subjects you choose are randomly selected. Now, most of the time, you cannot study every single person that you're going to generalize about. So, for example, if we wanted to study American high school students' attitudes about school uniforms, you're not going to be able to talk to or survey every single American high school student. However, that's the group that you're looking at. That's the group you're doing research on. So we refer to that as the population. The population is every single person who could potentially be included in that particular research. So if we're looking at American high school students' attitudes, again, we're looking at American high school students. Now, does that include somebody who lives in Germany, but yet they're taking an online course in an American high school? Well, technically, that would. Okay, they would be considered an American high school student. So they would be part of the population. Now, again, we can't get to every single person in the population to get their responses. So what we generally do is we select a sample. And that's what we're talking about here, is that sample needs to be randomly selected, okay? You don't just go and pick out certain people that you think will give you the right responses or the responses you want. You want to make it as random as possible. So, how could we do a random sample of the high school? Well, maybe you get a bunch of researchers together and you have your surveys present, and you are, at school at 6:45 in the morning before anybody walks in, and then once the doors are open, every fifth person who walks in the door gets a survey. Now, how do you know who the fifth person's going to be? You don't. You have no idea. And you're covering every single door. So it doesn't matter where a person comes in the building. If they randomly come in as the fifth person, they get a survey. And then that would be, your sample, your random sample. That's much more random than simply going around to the tables that you sit by at lunch and trying to get those responses. Now, if the sample is random, then essentially what is true of the sample we would be able to project to the population. So if we find out that the sample has an attitude about school uniforms in a certain way, well, then we could project and say, well, we believe all American high school students, not all, but a certain percentage of them, believe in the way that the sample did. If you look at, for example, political polls, prior to an election, during the campaign, a lot of times you will hear one candidate, is ahead of the other candidate by a 54 to 46%, ratio or what have you, comparison. Now, how do they know that? Well, they don't, go through and get data from every single person in America, but they take a random sample and they come up with those statistics. So those are some important terms to know, and we'll go over some other stuff in class about those.